Mr. Assistant Chief Meteorologist David Heckard. Well, you've probably been outside. You notice your lawn getting a little bit drier, especially in our western areas. We've been talking about this the last couple of weeks that we thought drought conditions could begin to set in here heading into the month of December. And already in early December, we are seeing some indications that the ground is really beginning to dry out there. And a great example of that is the updated drought monitor. This was last week's monitor. In fact, we talked about this last week. And you can see the abnormally dry conditions, mainly including coastal sections of South Georgia, and then a big swath here through the I-75 corridor. And you get into this area of Brown back through Valdosta, Lake City, right along I-75. That's where we saw moderate drought conditions. Notice what has happened here just in the last 7 days. We're now beginning to see the abnormally dry conditions work their way eastward across now much of much of southeast Georgia and in parts of northeast Florida. One area we're keeping an eye on now, Nassau County, and you can see right there, that is the north side of Jacksonville, now considered abnormally dry. The moderate drought conditions remain in place here right along that I-75 corridor. And then the orange shade you see in the back near Tallahassee, that's where we have severe drought conditions. So no doubt about it, very, very slowly our dry, borderline drought conditions are beginning to expand already here across northeast Florida and southeast Georgia. Part of the reason, we haven't seen any rainfall. We have seen nothing in the rain gauge out of the Jacksonville International Airport so far this month. That is below average already. In fact, the last rainfall was November the 30th, a little over a quarter of an inch. And it is interesting because we ended up with a surplus of rainfall in November, courtesy of Nicole, which, if you remember, was a hurricane that made landfall along the Treasure Coast. It's even worse out towards our west. Tallahassee, for the month of November and December combined, your deficit is now over 7 inches, and that's where we have the severe drought going on. Some good news, though. We do have rain chances in the forecast heading into next week, and there are some indications the pattern may begin to change. This is the precipitation outlook from the Climate Prediction Center for the next 6 to 10 days. You can see all of southeast Georgia and northeast Florida considering wetter than average. This will take us through mid-December, and then mid to late December, the 8 to 14-day outlook showing conditions wetter than average across much of the area, with average conditions developing mainly in the Brunswick and St. Simons Island area. What does this all mean? Well, it's likely not going to wipe out the drought in parts of the Panhandle, but it may begin to really lessen and wipe out some of the abnormally dry conditions that we've seen in the last couple of weeks expand their way eastward. This is great news because the rainfall this time of year is really critical to what happens later on in the spring when we really start drying out. The sun is much higher in the sky and it can really allow that rainfall to evaporate quickly back into the atmosphere. If you also remember, that's also brush fire season here in this region. So the more rainfall we get now, that can help abate some of the issues we may have heading into spring. I'm Assistant Chief Meteorologist David Heckard for Channel 4, the local station.